The Galactic Coalition's scout vessel, Silent Wind, glided silently through the darkness at the edge of the Sol system. The ship's sleek, metallic hull reflected the distant sunlight as it maintained a careful distance from the blue planet that was their target of interest. Inside the command center, Commander Tay stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his tall, slender frame casting a long shadow across the holographic display of Earth. "Fascinating," Commander Tay murmured, his large eyes blinking slowly as he absorbed the information scrolling across the screen. Such a water-rich world, yet so poorly defended. The command center hummed with quiet activity as the crew went about their tasks. Lieutenant Jin approached with a data tablet and bowed slightly. "Commander, we've completed our initial assessment of Earth's defensive capabilities," she said. "The results confirm our long-range scans. They have no planetary shields, no orbital defense network, and their space technology is limited to a few primitive stations and satellites." Commander Tay nodded, a slight smile forming on his thin lips. "What about their military strength?" "Primitive at best, sir," Lieutenant Jin replied. "Their weapons rely primarily on chemical propellants and basic explosives. Nothing that could threaten our vessels. Their aircraft can't even leave the atmosphere, and their naval vessels are confined to their oceans." Commander Tay expanded the holographic display, zooming in on various military installations across Earth. "And their biological vulnerabilities? The dominant species appears particularly fragile, sir. No natural armor, minimal strength compared to Coalition standards, and highly susceptible to temperature variations, radiation, and atmospheric changes," Lieutenant Jin explained. "They would offer minimal resistance to our extraction teams." Across the room, Officer Su frowned as he studied his monitor. For the past 12 hours, he had been analyzing human communications, their broadcasts, digital networks, and signal patterns. Something wasn't adding up. "Commander," Officer Su called out hesitantly, "I've noticed some unusual patterns in their media and communications." Commander Tay turned with mild irritation. "What kind of patterns, officer?" "Their entertainment depicts scenarios that contradict their actual capabilities," Su explained, pulling up examples on his screen. "They imagine themselves capable of incredible feats of survival and resistance, and their historical records show constant warfare among themselves. They've adapted to fighting against overwhelming odds repeatedly." The commander waved a dismissive hand. "Fantasy and historical trauma, nothing more. Many species create inspiring myths about themselves. It doesn't change their actual defensive capabilities." "But, sir," Officer Su persisted, "their war tactics show remarkable—" "That will be all, officer," Commander Tay interrupted firmly. "Your concern is noted, but unnecessary. Focus on your assigned tasks." Officer Su reluctantly returned to his station, still troubled by what he had discovered. Meanwhile, Commander Tay continued his assessment, methodically cataloguing Earth's resources and strategic points. Later that day, Commander Tay transmitted their findings to the Coalition's Central Command. The massive data package traveled through subspace, reaching the Coalition headquarters within hours. There, the Threat Assessment Board, 12 high-ranking officials from various planets within the Coalition, reviewed the information. "The Earth assessment has been completed," announced Director Park, the lead administrator. "Commander Tay recommends classification as a Level 1 threat, essentially defenseless." The board members nodded in agreement as they reviewed the data. Scans showed abundant resources: water, minerals, biological diversity, and uniquely a rich atmosphere that could be harvested for rare gases not commonly found in such concentrations. "Perfect for our needs," remarked one of the board members. "Their defenses are negligible compared to our technology." "What about the inhabitants?" asked another. "Numerous but manageable," Director Park replied. "The extraction can proceed with minimal forces. We'll assign Captain Han to lead the operation." In his private quarters aboard the Swift Harvester, Captain Han received his new assignment with satisfaction. His ship had been stationed at the edge of Coalition space for months, waiting for a resource-rich target. Earth would be his 4th extraction mission this cycle, and from the reports, it looked to be the easiest yet. "Computer, display all information on Earth," Han commanded, settling into his chair. The room filled with holographic images of the blue planet, its oceans, mountains, cities, and people. Captain Han studied them with cold calculation already, planning where to position his harvesting equipment for maximum efficiency. "Send a message to my crew," Han said. "We depart for the Sol system in 6 hours. This will be a standard extraction operation. Earth has been classified as defenseless, minimal resistance expected." As the swift harvester prepared for departure, back on the silent wind, Officer Su continued to review human communications with growing concern. Something about these humans didn't match their classification. In their stories, their history, even in their everyday interactions, he sensed a resilience that the official reports failed to capture. But his concerns remained unheard as the coalition machinery moved forward, setting in motion a plan based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what truly made Earth defenseless, or not. The massive extraction vessel, Swift Harvester, slid into Earth's orbit with barely a ripple in the planet's detection systems. Captain Han stood on the command deck, watching the blue-green world rotate slowly beneath them. Their cloaking technology had worked perfectly. No alerts, no scrambling fighter jets, no panicked communications. Just as expected from a defenseless planet. "Establish standard observation protocols," Captain Han ordered. "I want continuous monitoring of all military installations and major communication networks." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, setting up monitoring stations throughout the ship. Within hours, they had tapped into thousands of Earth's broadcast signals, surveillance cameras, and digital networks. The information flooded into the ship's analysis systems, where it was sorted and categorized by the team of specialists, analysts. Yuna sat at her station, surrounded by floating screens showing glimpses of human life. She had been assigned to cultural assessment, understanding human behavior patterns to predict how they might respond during the extraction process. Most species followed predictable patterns when faced with superior technology, but something about these humans puzzled her. "Director Kang," Yuna called to her supervisor, "I'm seeing some inconsistencies in the human behavioral patterns." The director walked over, his expression neutral. "What kind of inconsistencies?" Yuna gestured to her screens. "Their entertainment constantly depicts them overcoming impossible odds. Look at this. Humans surviving in space without proper equipment, fighting against vastly superior forces, enduring conditions that should kill them instantly." "It's just fantasy," Director Kang replied dismissively. "Most species create imaginary scenarios where they're more capable than they actually are." "But there's more," Yuna insisted, switching to historical footage. "Their entire history is an endless cycle of warfare. These humans have been fighting each other continuously for thousands of years. They've developed incredible adaptability in combat situations." On the screen, images flashed of ancient battles, modern conflicts, guerrilla warfare, and urban combat. Humans fighting in deserts, jungles, Arctic wastelands, and cramped city streets. "They've adapted to warfare in every possible environment," Yuna explained. "And look at this. They regularly train for scenarios where they're outgunned and outnumbered. Their military doctrine actually anticipates fighting superior forces." Director Kang frowned slightly. "Interesting, but ultimately irrelevant. Their most advanced weapons are still primitive compared to ours. Make a note in your report and continue monitoring." 3 days into the observation phase, Captain Han called a meeting of the senior staff. "Our resource scans are complete," he announced. "This planet exceeds expectations. The concentration of rare minerals in their polar regions alone would justify the extraction, but the biological diversity and atmospheric composition make this an exceptional find." The staff nodded in appreciation. "Bonuses would be substantial for such a rich harvest." "We'll proceed with the next phase," Captain Han continued. "Deploy an automated probe to this isolated region." He highlighted a remote area in what the humans called Montana on the tactical display. "The probe will collect soil and atmospheric samples, allowing us to calibrate our harvesting equipment." The probe launched that evening, a small, sleek craft designed to be virtually undetectable. It descended through Earth's atmosphere under cover of darkness and landed in a heavily forested area far from any major human settlements. Yuna was monitoring human communications when the first alert came through. "Captain," she called urgently, "the humans have detected our probe." Captain Han looked up sharply. "Impossible. That technology is beyond their detection capabilities." "Nevertheless," Una replied, "they've scrambled aircraft from 3 different bases. They're converging on the probe's location." On the main display, they watched as dots representing human aircraft moved with surprising speed toward the landing site. Within 20 minutes, far faster than their assessment had suggested possible, the first human aircraft were circling the area. "How did they detect it so quickly?" Lieutenant Jin wondered aloud. "Unknown," Una replied, scanning through data. "But they're coordinating their response across multiple military branches. Their communications suggest they've been preparing for something like this." Within an hour, the probe was surrounded by human military forces. They established a perimeter with remarkable efficiency, brought in specialized equipment, and began a careful approach to the alien device. "We should recall the probe," suggested Officer Day. "If they capture it, they won't understand the technology, even if they do capture it," Captain Han interrupted. "But yes, activate the self-destruct sequence." The probe disintegrated in a small flash of light, leaving only a scorch mark on the forest floor. But the humans' response had been troubling, far more organized and rapid than predicted. In her quarters that night, Una reviewed the day's events. She pulled up historical records of human responses to unusual phenomena: unexplained lights, crop circles, strange aircraft. In each case, their military had responded with similar efficiency. These humans had been preparing for extraterrestrial contact for decades. The next morning, Una presented her findings to Captain Han. "Sir, I believe we should reconsider our approach," she said. "The humans demonstrated capabilities well beyond what our initial assessment suggested." Captain Han studied her report briefly before setting it aside. "A minor anomaly. Perhaps our probe's stealth systems malfunctioned." "But, sir, the extraction will proceed as planned," Captain Han said firmly. "We've harvested dozens of worlds, with far more advanced defenses than this one. Prepare your team for ground operations. We begin tomorrow." As she left the captain's office, Una couldn't shake the feeling that they were making a dangerous mistake. These humans were different somehow, not in their technology, but in something more fundamental, something the Coalition's assessment had completely overlooked. The extraction team's 3 shuttles descended through Earth's atmosphere at dawn, their sleek forms briefly visible as streaks of light before their cloaking systems engaged. Captain Han had selected what their intel suggested was a low-security zone, a stretch of rural land with minimal military presence and sparse population, the perfect location to establish their first harvesting base. Lieutenant Q checked his equipment one final time as the shuttle touched down in a clearing surrounded by tall trees. The morning air was crisp and cool as the hatch opened with a soft hiss. "Perimeter team, secure the area," he ordered. "Science team, begin atmospheric sampling. Remember, the locals are primitive but numerous. Avoid engagement if possible." 20. Coalition soldiers moved out in practiced formation, their advanced weapons at the ready. The science team followed, carrying equipment to analyze Earth's soil and air composition. Everything was proceeding according to protocol until Officer Jin's voice crackled over the comm system. "Lieutenant, we have a problem. Local vehicles. Approaching from the east, at least 12 of them." Q frowned. "That's impossible. This area was confirmed uninhabited for 20 square kilometers. Nevertheless, they're coming fast. Military vehicles based on their signatures." How had the humans responded so quickly? Q raised his hand scanner and felt a chill run down his spine. Their cloaking technology wasn't working properly. Something in Earth's atmosphere was interfering with their equipment. "All teams prepare for defensive positions," Q ordered. "Security Protocol 4. The first human vehicles appeared at the edge of the clearing, rugged green trucks carrying soldiers in camouflage uniforms. They moved with surprising discipline, quickly establishing a perimeter around the aliens' position. "Sir, should we use crowd suppression?" asked one of Q's officers. "Yes, activate sonic disruptors." The aliens activated their non-lethal weapons, designed to incapacitate organic beings with precisely calibrated sound waves. The devices hummed to life, and then sputtered and died. "Sir, the disruptors aren't functioning," the officer reported, confusion evident in his voice. "Switch to paralysis beams," Q ordered. trying to keep the growing unease from his voice. But those weapons malfunctioned too. Something about Earth's specific atmospheric composition was interfering with their technology in ways their preliminary scans hadn't detected. The humans didn't wait for the aliens to solve their technical problems. With shocking coordination, they began advancing, using the trees and uneven ground for cover. Their primitive projectile weapons opened fire, simple chemically propelled metal slugs that should have been laughably ineffective against advanced alien armor. But they weren't. "Sir! Their weapons are penetrating our defensive fields!" shouted. An officer as one of their soldiers fell, clutching his arm. Q stared in disbelief. The humans had somehow intuited the frequency of their personal shields and adjusted their weapons accordingly. It should have taken days of analysis to figure that out. These humans had done it in minutes. Back on the Swift Harvester, analyst Yuna watched the disastrous scene unfold through the live feeds. She frantically searched the database for answers, pulling up biological scans of humans captured during the initial observation phase. "Director Kang," she called out, "I found something critical." The director hurried over, his normally impassive face now lined with concern. "The humans have a unique biochemical response system," Yuna explained, highlighting a section of the biological scan. "When threatened, their bodies release compounds called adrenaline and cortisol that temporarily enhance their physical capabilities, increase strength, speed, pain tolerance, and cognitive processing." "Are you saying these creatures become stronger when attacked?" Director Kang asked incredulously. "Exactly. Our standard threat assessment doesn't account for species with this adaptation. They literally become more dangerous the more threatened they feel." On another screen, Yuna pulled up a global map of Earth's military installations. "And there's more. Those primitive nuclear weapons we dismissed. I've been analyzing their deployment systems. They're far more sophisticated than we realized. The ARI map lit up with hundreds of launch sites, submarines, and mobile platforms, a web of nuclear deterrence covering the entire planet. If the humans launch even 10% of these weapons," Yuna said quietly, "they could destroy our entire fleet." Director Kang's face paled. "How did we miss this?" "We were looking for the wrong things," Yuna replied. "We measured their technology against our standards without understanding their unique approach to warfare." On the ground, Lieutenant Q and his team had retreated to their shuttles, abandoning equipment as they fell back under increasingly effective human fire. The extraction team's advanced weapons were either malfunctioning or proving surprisingly ineffective against the humans' rapidly adapting tactics. As his shuttle lifted off, pursued now by human aircraft that seemed to appear from nowhere, Q watched through the viewport as the humans already began collecting the alien technology left behind. With growing horror, he realized they would likely begin reverse engineering it immediately. "Captain Han," he reported, as soon as communications were established with the main ship. "The mission has failed. We must withdraw immediately." "Impossible," Han replied. "We've never failed an extraction. We'll simply deploy more forces." "Sir," Q interrupted, something he would never normally dare to do. "With all due respect, we have gravely underestimated these humans. They don't defend like other species. They don't rely on shields or barriers. They adapt. They improvise. Their weapons are primitive but effective, and they're already learning to counter our technology." There was a long pause before Captain Han responded. "Return to the ship," he said finally. "We need to reassess." As the shuttle docked with the Swift Harvester, Lieutenant Q had a disturbing thought. The Coalition had classified Earth as defenseless because they had been looking for the wrong kind of defenses. Perhaps humanity's greatest defense wasn't their technology at all. It was something far more formidable: their remarkable ability to adapt and overcome against all odds. The message from Captain Han reached Coalition headquarters within hours. Admiral Sung, a veteran of 17 planetary extractions, listened to the report with growing concern in his private command chamber. The holographic display showed the Swift Harvester orbiting Earth, still cloaked, but now maintaining a much higher altitude. "You're telling me," Admiral Sung said slowly, "that a pre-spaceflight civilization repelled our initial landing force?" "Yes, Admiral," Captain Han replied, the strain evident in his voice. Their response was unexpected. Our technology malfunctioned in ways our preliminary scans didn't predict, and the humans adapted to our tactics with alarming speed. Admiral Sung stroked his chin thoughtfully. In 30 years of service to the Coalition, he had never encountered a serious setback on a Level 1 world. It was almost unthinkable. "Hold position," he ordered. "The 7th Fleet is completing an operation in the Cygnus sector. I'm redirecting them to your location. 6 warships should be sufficient to deal with any primitive resistance." On Earth, something remarkable was happening. For perhaps the first time in human history, the nations of the world were setting aside their differences with astonishing speed. Emergency sessions of the United Nations stretched through the night. Military leaders from countries that had been enemies for generations now sat side by side, sharing information freely. The wreckage from the alien shuttle had been transported to a secure facility where the brightest scientific minds from a dozen countries worked around the clock to understand the technology. Progress that should have taken years was happening in days. General Lee stood before a table of international military leaders, pointing to a global map marked with red dots indicating alien sightings. "They'll be back," she said firmly, "and in greater numbers. Our first encounter was likely just a scouting party." "How can we possibly defend against their technology?" asked one of the officials. "Even with what we've recovered, we're centuries." Behind them, a scientist stepped forward, dark circles under his eyes from days without sleep. "We don't need to match their technology," he explained. "We just need to understand it enough to counter it. Their systems have weaknesses we can exploit." He held up what looked like a modified radio transmitter. "This device disrupts their cloaking technology. We've already distributed the specifications to military installations worldwide." General Lee nodded in approval. "We've also discovered that their energy weapons are sensitive to certain atmospheric conditions. We're deploying aerosol dispersal, systems that will render them less effective." "What about our own weapons?" another official asked. "Our conventional weapons are already proving effective, especially when modified based on what we've learned," General Lee replied. "But more importantly, we're revealing our hidden defense systems." The map changed, showing dozens of previously classified installations around the globe, orbital platforms disguised as satellites, underwater bases, and mountain fortresses that had been built in secret, many during the Cold War and maintained in the decades since. "Every major nation has contingency plans for extraterrestrial contact," General Lee explained, "some dating back to the 1950s. We've been preparing for this possibility for generations." In orbit around Earth, Captain Han received the first warning when their long-range sensors detected 6 coalition warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. The reinforcements had arrived. "Captain," Lieutenant Jin reported from her monitoring station, "we're detecting unusual activity on the planet's surface." The main screen displayed multiple locations around the planet where unusual energy signatures were emanating from what had previously appeared to be ordinary satellites or weather stations. "Those weren't in our initial scans," Captain Han said, his voice tense. "They were disguised, sir," Jin explained. "The humans have activated previously hidden defense systems, and there's more. They've somehow modified their radar systems to detect our cloaking technology." Captain Han felt a chill run down his spine. "How is that possible? They couldn't have reverse-engineered our technology so quickly." Analyst Yuna, who had been monitoring the situation closely, spoke up. "They didn't need to fully understand it, sir. They just needed to identify its vulnerabilities. These humans have a remarkable talent for finding weaknesses and exploiting them." The bridge fell silent as they watched the main screen. All across Earth, military forces were mobilizing with surprising coordination. Air defense systems were activating, naval vessels were putting to sea. And most concerning of all, what appeared to be new weapons were being moved into position. Weapons that hadn't existed days earlier. Admiral Sung's flagship, the inevitable Victory, led the 7th Fleet into Earth orbit 3 days later. The massive warship dwarfed the Swift Harvester, its weapon systems capable of reducing entire cities to ash. "Status report," Admiral Sung demanded as soon as communication was established. "Admiral," Captain Han began, "I strongly recommend we reconsider this extraction. The humans have..." "I didn't ask for your recommendation, Captain," Admiral Sung interrupted. "I asked for a status report." Reluctantly, Captain Han outlined the situation. As he spoke, Admiral Sung's expression grew increasingly grim. "These developments are concerning but not decisive," the Admiral said when Han had finished. "We will proceed with a show of force, target their largest military installation and destroy it. That should demonstrate our technological superiority and break their will to resist." But when the coalition ships positioned themselves to attack, Earth responded with a surprising countermeasure. Dozens of previously hidden platforms in orbit activated, creating a web of interference that disrupted the targeting systems of the alien fleet. "What is happening?" Admiral Sung demanded as warning signals flashed across his bridge. "They're defensive. Systems are more advanced than we thought," Captain Han replied. "And sir, we're detecting launches from the surface, hundreds of them." The human counterattack came not with nuclear weapons, but with thousands of much smaller missiles, each containing technology reverse-engineered from the captured alien equipment. They weren't particularly destructive, but they didn't need to. They simply needed to confuse and disrupt the coalition fleet systems. Admiral Sung watched in disbelief as his advanced warships struggled to counter the human response. These weren't the actions of a defenseless species. This was a coordinated strategy from a civilization that had spent its entire history fighting against nature, against each other, and now against aliens who had gravely underestimated them. "They don't think like us," Yuna said quietly, watching the chaos unfold. "We build walls and shields to protect ourselves. They learn to attack more effectively. Their entire defensive philosophy isn't about preventing damage. It's about ensuring they can strike back harder than whatever hit them first." Admiral Sung stood motionless before the Coalition High Council, his usually immaculate uniform bearing the marks of the recent conflict. The Grand Chamber, with its soaring crystal ceiling that displayed the millions of stars in Coalition territory, had fallen completely silent. The 12 council members stared at him with expressions ranging from disbelief to outright anger. "You recommend complete withdrawal?" The head councillor finally broke the silence, her voice echoing through the chamber. "From a pre-spaceflight civilization?" Admiral Sung nodded stiffly. "Yes, councillor, I do." "Explain yourself," another councillor demanded. "We have never abandoned an extraction, particularly not from a Level 1 world." Admiral Sung activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. Images of Earth appeared, its blue oceans, green landmasses, and white clouds. Then the display shifted to show the battle that had unfolded in Earth's orbit. "The humans don't defend as we expected," Admiral Sung explained. "When we classified them as defenseless, we were measuring by entirely wrong standards." The display showed human military forces adapting in real time to alien tactics, creating countermeasures with shocking speed and coordinating globally with unexpected efficiency. "Their technological level misled us," the Admiral continued. "They appear primitive because they developed along a different path than most coalition species. Where we focused on protective technologies, shields, barriers, armor, they focused on offensive capabilities and rapid adaptation." One of the councillors leaned forward. "Are you suggesting this was deliberate on their part?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Sung replied. "After analyzing their communications and historical records, we believe the humans have been aware of the possibility of extraterrestrial contact for centuries. They maintained an appearance of vulnerability while secretly preparing for this exact scenario." The council chamber erupted in murmurs of concern. The idea that a species would deliberately appear weaker than they were as a strategy was deeply unsettling to the coalition mindset. 3 weeks later, 3 weeks, analyst Yuna found herself aboard a small diplomatic vessel approaching Earth. After the coalition's formal withdrawal and the reclassification of Earth as approach with extreme caution, tentative diplomatic channels had opened between the two civilizations. Yuna had been chosen as the chief cultural liaison due to her unique understanding of human psychology. As the shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, she felt both nervous and oddly excited. These humans had defied all expectations. What else might they surprise her with? The diplomatic meeting took place in a neutral facility constructed specifically for this purpose on a small island in the Pacific Ocean. Human representatives from every major nation waited inside, their faces showing the same mixture of caution and curiosity that Una herself felt. "Welcome to Earth," said one of the human diplomats, stepping forward. "We appreciate your willingness to meet with us peacefully." "Thank you for agreeing to these talks," Una replied carefully. "We have much to learn from each other." Over the next several days, Una gained insights that fundamentally changed her understanding of humanity. In one particularly revealing conversation with a human military historian, she finally grasped the true nature of Earth's defenses. "You have to understand," the historian explained, sitting across from her in the facility's garden. "Humans have spent our entire history fighting. Against nature, against each other, against disease and disaster. Adaptability isn't just a trait for us, it's how we survived." "But your technology," Una said, "you could have developed more advanced defensive systems." The historian smiled. "We did, but not in the way you expected. Consider this. Throughout our history, which civilizations survived? Not always the ones with the biggest walls or strongest armies. Often, it was the ones that appeared vulnerable enough that potential conquerors underestimated them." Una stared at him. "You're saying humanity deliberately maintained an appearance of vulnerability as a strategy?" "Partly," he nodded. "We call it strategic ambiguity. We don't reveal all our capabilities. We keep potential adversaries guessing. It served us well in our own conflicts, and as it turns out, it works against advanced alien civilizations too." Una sent regular reports back to the Coalition, each one revealing new aspects of human ingenuity and resilience. She documented how humans had already begun incorporating elements of alien technology into their own devices, not by copying them exactly, but by adapting the principles to work with their existing systems. 6 months after first contact, researcher Kuhn stood before the Coalition Archives Committee, proposing an unprecedented change to the classification system. "Based on our experiences with Earth," she explained, "I propose a new category, not defenseless, differently defended. This would apply to civilizations whose defensive strategies don't align with our traditional metrics, but are nevertheless effective." The committee approved the change, and Earth became the first planet in Coalition records to receive this new designation. 1 year to the day after the Coalition's first arrival in Earth's orbit, a remarkable ceremony took place. On the same island where diplomatic relations had begun, human representatives signed the Galactic Cooperation Agreement, formally joining the interstellar community, not as subjects or resources to be harvested, but as equals. Una, now permanently assigned as Earth's liaison, watched the ceremony with a sense of pride. She had come to deeply respect these strange, adaptable beings who had forced the mighty Coalition to completely reconsider its understanding of what made a species truly formidable. Later that evening, at a celebration following the signing, Una found herself speaking with a young human scientist who had been instrumental in reverse engineering Coalition technology. "What I still don't understand," Una admitted, "is how you did it so quickly. Even with your adaptability, the technological gap should have been too great." The scientist smiled. "We had help, though we didn't know it at the time." "What do you mean?" "Your entertainment broadcasts," the scientist explained. "For decades, your ships have been passing close enough to Earth that sometimes your signals reached us. We thought they were just stories, fiction, but they contained enough real information about your technology that when you actually arrived, we had already been thinking about how to counter it for years." Una stared at the human in astonishment, then began to laugh. Even their first contact had been shaped by humanity's remarkable ability to turn a disadvantage into an advantage. As she looked up at the night sky, now filled with both familiar Earth constellations and the distant lights of Coalition vessels, Una realized that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. Humanity had joined the interstellar community, not through the traditional path of technological advancement, but by proving that their unique evolutionary path, one forged through constant conflict and challenges, had created something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that truly thrived on overcoming impossible odds.